I want to tell you a little bit about Fair Chance. Fair Chance was founded in 2002. It is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that leverages the power of community-based organizations to transform the lives of children and youth experiencing poverty. Each year, we select nonprofits whose work aligns with our mission, and we provide them with free comprehensive capacity building to improve the infrastructure, sustainability, and growth of their organizations. And our vision is to develop a community where every child succeeds. We have worked with over 120 organizations in DC and Prince George's County, Maryland. And in a little bit, you will get to hear firsthand from one of our alumni about the Pathways Partnership experience and benefits. But first, I do want to tell you about our Pathways Partnership, starting with who we partner with. So who does Fair Chance partner with? The nonprofits that we partner with transform the lives of children, youth, and families by working to achieve outcomes that have been proven to be indicators of being on a pathway out of poverty. And our partner organizations and their leaders are at a point where they are ready to invest in capacity building. Okay, so we first select our partners who are working towards outcomes in one of our 4 domains, as you can see here: education, health and well-being, housing and income, and community. And we think of community as things such as, focusing on environmental justice or advocacy or systems reform, etc. We also ask that these organizations serve one of the populations here, so parents and infants, early childhood, childhood and adolescents, or young adults up to 24. Okay, so we are essentially looking for organizations that are working with children and youth or parents and guardians who are experiencing poverty in DC. And while your mission can be about anything, so long as what we want is for you to be working towards improvements in one of our 4 outcome domains. So for example, your programming can be, music or dance or painting, as long as the arts are just the vehicle through which you are improving, say, academic outcome or physical health. The second point about who we partner with is about timing. So type in the chat, if you will, how many of you are familiar with the concept of nonprofit organizational life cycles? And it's okay if you're not, just a yes or no. Okay. Excellent. Okay. All right. So I'm going to share this with you. Oops. So this may be familiar or not, and either way, it's okay. The nonprofit organizational life cycle depicts the generalized trajectory of many nonprofits. So starting with an idea at the idea phase in stage 1, and growing the organization until later getting to that point around stage 4, where the organization needs to figure out if it is still meeting the needs of its community and can continue to be sustainable. And if not, the organization needs to renew itself or close. So this image also depicts the type of capacity building that is needed at the different stages. And I share this to say that here at Fair Chance, our Pathways partnerships are not about helping you create your programming. So not the startup or phase 1, but they are about helping you build your infrastructure. So at Fair Chance, we have 2 capacity building partnerships programs designed to support organizations that are in stage 2 of the nonprofit life cycle. So our Pathways, which is what we'll talk about today, is designed for organizations that are moving out of stage 1 and entering stage 2, and then Praxis, which we will recruit for in the fall of this year, is designed for organizations that are in the middle or towards the end of stage 2. Okay, any questions so far? Checking the chat. Okay, if you have questions at any point, you can just put that in the chat and or raise your hands. And if there are none right now, then I will pass it on to Salome so she can tell you a little bit more about pathways in particular. Salome, over to you.
Thank you, Bemini. Next slide, please. Thank you. The Pathways Partnership is designed to align leadership and organizational practices to build stronger nonprofits. The program is focused on shoring up fundamental parts, so aligning your people, your money, and your programs. The Pathways program is for nonprofits that serve children, youth, and families experiencing poverty in Washington, D.C. Pathways partners tend to be nonprofits with budgets typically under $200,000 a year. They have been running a program for at least 1 year, and the ED has been in their role for at least a year and plans to stay for the duration of the partnership, so 8 months. It's also important to note that leaders can be paid or volunteers. And finally, the nonprofit has the resources to sustain their operations for the duration of the 8-month partnership. During the partnership, nonprofits work in 2 of the following capacity building areas, as demonstrated on the roots of the tree: board development, fundraising, program evaluation, and leadership and management. To learn more about each area, you can visit our website, and we're going to drop a link in the chat that will direct you to our capacity building definitions. On that page, you'll learn more about the definitions as well as what that work will look like in each area. At the end of the partnership, partners walk away with an increased understanding in 2 focus areas and new revised tools, policies, and procedures. Our goal is to really make sure an executive director is confident in leading their organizations in 2 of these areas. Next slide, please, Bemini. Thank you. There are 2 priority considerations that Fair Chance uses that reflect our commitment to our mission and advancing racial equity in the nonprofit sector in DC. The first one is at least 50% of the children, youth, and families your organization serves are Washington, D.C. residents who are experiencing poverty, and the executive director or a majority of members of the board of directors, including the board chair, identify as people of color. Note that you can still be a partner even if you don't meet these priority considerations, and just because you meet a priority consideration doesn't mean that you are guaranteed a partnership. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, the Pathways Partnership is an 8-month program and it has several components. The program begins with a group orientation designed to prepare you for your partnership and learn more about Fair Chance, your fellow cohort members, and the exec directors and board representatives in the room. Exec directors will also participate in cohort-based leadership development activities, including a leadership style assessment and a multi-session discussion group. The organizational assessment is the foundation of the partnership. It helps create a customized work plan that establishes the goals that the exec director, the board representative, and the Fair Chance capacity building specialist will set out to achieve during the partnership. Even though our capacity building partnerships are free, our partnerships do require considerable investment in the leadership's time. We expect that executive directors devote 8 hours per week for the duration of the partnership to doing the work needed to achieve the goals in the work plan. Fair Chance CBSs also devote 8 hours a week to that work. And throughout the partnership, executive directors and their CBS will meet every week for about 2 of those 8 hours. In regards to board participation in this partnership, if board development or leadership and management are areas that are selected that you must work together on, the board member should devote about 3 hours per week for 4 months during the partnership. If you're familiar with Pathways and applied in the past, note that this is a change that we made for this cycle. Throughout the partnership, there will be cohort learning opportunities, times where we'll bring the cohort together to learn and share about specific topics. Last year, the Pathways executive directors did a leadership development work using Brene Brown's Dare to Lead book, and we held a workshop on the board's role in fundraising for all the cohort's executive directors and board members. Celebration is vital to the work. We know you work hard in this partnership and you're doing great work, and we want to make sure we recognize that. We hold a small celebration at the end of the partnership to recognize your endeavors. After the partnership, there's a survey that you have to complete so that we can tell the story of the impact of our work together. Finally, as an alumni, you have access to further opportunities for capacity building and support with our Fair Chance Alumni Network. Some of these services include a listserv exclusively for executive directors, pro bono legal support provided by Hogan Lovells, and quarterly executive director learning community sessions. Next slide, please. Capacity building is a term that gets used a lot, but can mean different things. One common definition is capacity building strengthens the management, governance, and performance of nonprofit organizations so that they can better achieve their missions and have greater social impact over time. The Fair Chance Partnership is a type of capacity building where you get someone by your side, a coach, a sharer, a thought partner, someone who will help you navigate the things that are needed to make your organization function well. Some important things to understand about Pathways. Pathways is a space for EDs and board members to learn, share, and create. Fair Chance capacity building is done in partnership with executive directors and a board representative. So not only is the work designated and tailored to the unique needs of each nonprofit, but the nonprofit leaders have the knowledge, skills, and confidence needed to build and use systems, tools, and processes after the Fair Chance partnership is completed. A working partnership with one capacity building specialist means that partners work with one Fair Chance capacity building specialist for the entire duration of the partnership. But that capacity building specialist has the resources and support of the entire Fair Chance team behind them. Finally, the partnership is free, customized, and intensive. We understand small nonprofits, which is why our services are free and customized. We know that a nonprofit industry best practice may not be a best practice for your organization. Some important things to note with the Pathways partnership is not. It is not a traditional consulting engagement, an extra staff person, nor something to delegate to volunteer staff or board. For those of you who may have worked with consultants in the past, please note we are not consultants, we are capacity builders, which means we do not do the work for you, we do the work together. The success of any partnership is dependent on how much the executive director and the board representative put into our work together. This is why timing is something important to consider before applying. You should ask yourself, do you plan to be focused on working on your organization's systems, policies, and procedures from October to May? Is learning and working collaboratively in virtual setting right for you? Finally, do you have a board member available to work on board development and leadership management during the partnership? One last thing to consider about timing. If your organization is in financial crisis, this is not the right time for a partnership. If you're worried about keeping the doors open, it is hard to have the bandwidth to focus on capacity building. Finally, in terms of the work, the partnership is not a way for you to get someone else to help you with the things on your plate. Our capacity building specialists are here to support you and make getting those things done easier. And finally, while we engage your board and staff in the work as needed, depending on what we're working on, you cannot delegate the partnership work to them. Next slide, please. Our numbers and our alumni speak for themselves. Fair Chance experience is unique. You cannot beat the time commitment, the one-on-one relationship, the expertise, and the community. 100% of our executive directors felt that their work completed during the partnership gave the organization a stronger foundation and strengthened them as a leader. We've included 2 quotes from our alumni, and I'll give you a chance to read those, learn more about the impact that the partnership had on their organizations. Next slide, please. So to wrap up, some key points to consider. The Fair Chance Pathways Partnership is an 8-month partnership that will run from October 2022 to May 2023. The 4 areas that we focus on in Pathways are board development, fundraising, leadership and management, and program evaluation. The work is up to 8 hours a week for the executive director, with 2 of those hours in partnership with a capacity building specialist and 6 hours of independent work. The board member, if you do board development or leadership and management, should dedicate 3 hours a week for up to 4 months. You're required to participate in partnership cohort-based activities, which include leadership development and workshops. And finally, there's data that's required to be submitted 1 year after the partnership ends. Next slide, please. Some things to note about COVID. For the last 2 years, we have held the Pathways Partnership virtually, and we are monitoring the pandemic and may conduct the 2022 partnership in person, virtually, or hybrid, depending on the individual health and safety needs of our staff and partners. No matter how we do the partnership, it is important that executive directors, board representatives, and capacity building specialists are able to see and be seen, edit and share documents to work together in real time, and be in a location where confidential or sensitive issues can be openly discussed. Next slide. Are there any questions about the Pathways Partnership?
Awesome. If additional questions come up at any point, please put in the chat or raise your hand. All right, so we are going to move into our partnership experience segment. So you should know we have great capacity builders here, specialists here at Fairchance. And I have had the privilege of working with Sawida Kamara, who is our Pathways capacity building specialist for the last 2 years, or almost 2 years that I've been at Fairchance. Sawida came to Fairchance with over 15 years of experience working with small, mid-sized, and large organizations in the nonprofit, government, and quasi-public arenas. In the area, she has experience in working in the areas of organizational development around change management, systems and process improvement, and leadership development. I'm going to turn it over to her so that she can introduce and lead our next segment on our partnership experience. So Sawida, on to you.
Thank you. Thank you again, Bemine, and hello again to everyone. I have the great pleasure of having this conversation with Charlyn Anderson. Charlyn is the executive director of Starting With Today. She's actually the founder and executive director of Starting With Today, which is an organization that promotes Black well-being and liberation. Charlyn and SWT are alumni partners from our third Pathways cohort, which also happened to be our first virtual cohort, where we also included the leadership development discussion group. So Charlyn is going to share a lot of what you will hear will sound a lot like what your experience would be if you were accepted into a partnership. I had the great pleasure of working with Charlyn to do focus work on the areas of fundraising and leadership and management. When she was in it, was called resource alignment, but it's okay. We also worked really closely with her board chair in the area of board development. So just kind of wanted to anchor what are the areas that we worked in as we have this conversation. Without further ado, Charlyn, can you please share with us, why did you apply to Fairchance? You know, what did you hope to achieve?
Yes, and good afternoon, good morning to everyone joining us. One of the reasons I applied is because I knew we were scaling and we needed to strengthen our infrastructure and really get some processes in place that were not chaotic and that would anchor the organization to really be able to scale strategically and wisely. So that was the main reason applying. And we recommended as well, and have seen the results of some other nonprofit organizations in DC and how they were able to scale their impact. And that was something that we were looking to do, and we felt we were equipped to take on the next challenge.
Thank you. Was it difficult for you to find time for the partnership? You know, like, how did you make time for it?
Yes. I think one of the things that was really important to me was to have dedicated time. And that's something I began to implement before actually the partnership. So Mondays are typically my ease into the work days. So me and Sawida scheduled our meetings on Monday afternoon. So that gave me time to still really plan, get my tea, get my yoga, get my mind ready for the week, and then get some strategic work in. And I think one of the benefits of it was that, you know, our meetings are working meetings. And that allowed me not to necessarily have it all together when it came to that meeting, but like really kind of work through it.
Yes. You for mentioning working meetings. Yes. What are the top 2 or 3 ways you would say the partnership has helped, either with yourself, the organization, or in, you know, what is different as a result today of
everything's different. We're so much stronger as an organization. one of the things I was talking about leadership wise, I think one of the most powerful things was doing the leadership assessments and really identifying our strengths as executive directors, and even talking about the different strengths among the different executive directors in our cohort, and how leadership doesn't need to look one way. And my leadership as a Black woman experience and my lens is going to be different from someone else that comes from a different space or different community. So that's been really powerful. And then also just everything seems urgent in the nonprofit world. And so having a really good thought partner who is, committed to understanding our work and our approach, helping us find language for it has been really powerful. And then also strategically getting our priorities in order. So we know what's next. We know what we're looking for next. We know when we hire, what that will look like, what positions we're hiring next. So getting so much groundwork has been life-changing for sure.
What advice would you give someone who's considering applying for a partnership? Just what comes to mind?
I would say a couple of things, definitely, manage the time, because whatever you put in is what you're going to get out of the partnership. And the second thing was be really transparent, honest about where you are as an organization to really maximize this opportunity. I know a lot of times with funders, we try to put our best foot forward, right? This is not that situation. Put your most honest, transparent, definitely talk about your strengths, of course, but also know what areas that you're struggling with and have really honest conversations about that, because that's where the work needs to be and the focus needs to be applied. So if you're not self-aware, or you're not, transparent about those weaknesses, I think the assessment's a great opportunity to get really clear picture about where you are. That's intensive assessment, and also a great learning opportunity. And yeah, I think the results will begin to really speak. I think another thing too, it's not an instant fix. A lot of things that Sawida and I worked on in 2021, we're just now beginning to implement now. And I think that's really important to note that implementation sometimes is not overnight. Is something that's continuous as we continue to evolve as an organization. But having some groundwork there has made the process of implementation a lot easier and smoother.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Charlyn. Any other thoughts to add to this conversation?
I say have fun. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. But the people that I have been with, the other executive directors and the Fair Chance community, it has been so warm and inviting and nurturing, in a very safe space for executive directors, when I feel like a lot of people are expecting things of you. So I think that's a really important to honor that, and have fun in the process is what I would encourage you to do as well.
Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it back over to Bemine.
Thank you, Sawida, and thank you, Charlyn. That is so amazing, and I really appreciate what you pointed out about transparency and sharing openly about what your needs are, so that you can then receive the support in those areas. So that really struck me, and of course, have fun. I do have a question for you, Sawida, as the capacity building specialist. Can you share with us about the day-to-day experience of the partnership from a capacity building specialist perspective?
Sure. So I'm glad Salome's already reviewed like how the partnership experience looks, like the visual, because it actually, my day-to-day experience varies alongside with the partnership. So in the first few months of the partnership, we are really in that intensive organizational assessment phase. But alongside that, we are also doing the leadership discussion group. So I'm spending a lot of time really like learning who my executive directors are, really listening and reflecting on where they're saying about where their organization is, which is why I do appreciate what Charlyn said about the transparency, because by the time we get into partner work, I want to really know that we're working on the things that are really important to the organization and will really move it forward. So I spend a lot of time, the day-to-day experience at that time is really around listening, reflecting, and starting to find those tools and resources and guidance that will start, getting us down that road of, addressing some of those early needs that we see. But I also spend a lot of time in that point, kind of thinking through what are the kinds of topics or discussions that I'm seeing across this cohort of leaders. Because when we engage in the leadership discussion group, even though we're reading Brene Brown's Dare to Lead, what I like to do is really think about what are those podcasts, what are those videos, what are those things that really will, help break down courageous leadership, daring leadership, vulnerability, shame for this, whatever the topic is that really will resonate with these executive directors, and not just leadership development in a kind of broad sense, but what I feel is emerging in this cohort. So I do a lot of emergent work in terms of thinking through what do we have you all discuss, and and I love y'all's thought partnership in that as well. So I spend a lot of time in thought partnership with you all, and that also takes us into the work plan. When we're in that December part of the partnership, we're creating your work plan. That is a co-creative experience. I actually ask a lot of my EDs and my board reps at that time to really think about ideal things to work on, 1 to 3 things, and not everything. Because when you go through the assessment, you will feel like everything is wrong with your organization and you want to change everything. And so what I try to work with you all in that is really holding you to what you feel is priority work to do. And then when we get into January to April, we are really in that partner work space. And so for me, my day-to-day experience is preparing you for our one-on-one meetings. It is making sure that you have an agenda for what's coming up next. So that's, sending you things to read, finding things, sending you things to read, to review, but also when we're working on actual deliverables, being that person who is, your thought partner in that, but also I'm helping create the documents. I'm reviewing things. I'm making sure I give edits and get things to that next level. I'm having calls with vendors. For example, if you need like a database or those type of things, I'm the one reaching out to vendors to arrange demonstrations for us, So I really kind of, even though I'm not staff, I kind of take on some of the administrative work of the partnership to make sure that we move things forward. So so in short, my perspective ebbs and flows with where you are in the partnership, where our partners are in the partnership.
Thank you so much, Sawida. That is such a helpful insight into how this cohort is created and what the work looks like. And clearly has a lot of impact, as Charlyn is letting us know in the chat. Thank you for all you do, Sawida. And just to those who've joined us recently, Sawida is our capacity building specialist for the Pathways program. And she and Charlyn have just been sharing with us about what a day in the life of a partnership looks like. And this is being recorded. And so you will have access to some of the earlier stuff as well. At this point, does anyone have questions either for Charlyn or Sawida? And you can put that in the chat, or you can raise your hand and ask. Okay. Shy bunch, that's okay. We will keep it moving. We still have a segment on the application process, and we will have more opportunities for question and answers at the end of this. So I will hand it back over to Salome so she can take us through the application process and share some tips with you. Thank you again, Charlyn and Sawida.
Thank you, Beverly. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the application for the Pathways Partnership is comprehensive. You can see all the sections of the application on the screen. It's comprehensive in order for our selection team to get a full picture of your organization and your needs. Some important things to note. Data. We would like to know the demographics of the children, youth, and families you serve. If you don't currently collect data, that's okay. Tell us who your programs are designed for. Note, data on children, youth, and families our partner serves is important to tracking our impact. So if selected as a partner, you must be willing to track and share this information in the future. Capacity building needs. This section is of great importance. This is something that Sawida alluded to, that Charlyn alluded to, transparency, and really reflecting and describing for us your vision for your organization and your current capacity building needs. You can do this by either telling us what you'd like to have in place that you currently do not have, or if you don't know what the solution is, you can describe what's not working. For example, you can say that we need a better process for recruiting board members. In terms of attachments, there's a one-page form for your board chair to complete. It is linked in the application, and you can send it to your board chair so that they can access and complete the form online. And finally, after submitting your application, you'll be sent a link to sign up and to hold 2 interview slots. The first interview is for the executive director and board representative and will be 2 hours long. The second interview is for the executive director alone and will be 1 hour long. For those of you who have applied in the past, we made some improvements this cycle to make sure that completing the application is as convenient as possible. In the program information section, you may link to your website if you feel that it describes your programs in full. If you prefer, there's still space to write about your programs in the application. In the finances section, we would like to know how much money you spent last year and how much you plan to spend this year. Financial documents like a budget, statement of activities, etc. are not required. If you do not already have these documents, we don't want you to create a new one for this application. We'll ask you more questions about your finances for the interview. For any of the required attachments that are in the application, if you have the current information in a format that you've used for another application, please send that in. You do not need to recreate anything for us, but please make sure that it has all the requested information. Next slide, please. Some general tips for completing the application. We hope that our application provides a space for you to reflect on who you are, what you do, and how you need to develop, grow, and strengthen, both as an executive director and as an organization. Please remember that you are not applying to fair transfer funding and that you do not have to sell us a shiny organization with amazing results. In fact, if you do say that, we're wondering, do you actually need a partnership? So some points to keep in mind. Clarity. We are not looking for buzzwords or fancy prose. We're looking for clarity. The more we understand your organization, programs, and capacity building needs, the better your application will be. Unique. Every nonprofit is special in some way. Help us understand why your organization or program is unique and how you approach your work, who you serve, how you met an unmet need, or whatever it is that makes your organization great. Transparency, that's that word again. We hold all of what you tell us in confidence and do not share it outside of our selection team, which is made up of Fair Chance leadership team and program staff. So you do not have to hide all your pain points. Another element of transparency is helping us understand your finances. Having debt, a deficit, or cash flow issues does not necessarily reduce your chances of selection. But as we mentioned earlier, in terms of readiness, if you're on the brink of financial crisis, our model is it's not the time for partnership. You need to focus on getting through that crisis and may not have the time to devote for an intensive capacity building partnership like Pathways. But if you're in debt or have a deficit, you can just explain as much as you can because numbers don't tell the whole story. For example, we partnered with an organization whose funding was very uncertain, but because their programs were run by volunteers and the ED could work without salary if need be, the organization was able to successfully complete the partnership. Finally, partnership. Remember that the work you do during a partnership, we do together, rather than that we achieve things for you. In writing about your capacity building needs in the application, emphasize what you want to learn or develop in order to achieve your goals. Who Fair Chance selects for partnership is based on a number of factors, and not all of those factors have to do with you or your application. For example, if the application pool this year is very large and our capacity is small, the application may not be successful this year. But keep the faith. We have had organizations that have received a partnership after applying for 2 years in a row, and some that have applied once and then successfully applied a second time years later. If you've gone through today and think you may be a better fit for our other program in DC, Praxis, and have some questions, you can sign up for a consultation. We're going to put the link in the chat, and it's also available on our website. If you decide to apply for Pathways, and we determine through our selection process that Praxis is a partnership that can best meet your needs, we will let you know, and you'll have to reapply for the next Praxis cycle. Applications for Praxis Partnership will not be available until the fall, and the next cohort starts May 2023. And finally, start early and save your work. Applications are due July 1st, 2022 at 5 p.m.